We haven't done this before. Welcome, Harlan Community Elementary School. This is done especially for you. My name is George Krasinski, and this is my daughter, my youngest daughter, Rosie, who is also an artist. She lives in New York, a very busy place, and I live in the mountains of North Carolina, not so busy at all. And I really do value the fact that you've taken trouble to list a few questions which we've decided that we're going to be interviewed on and answer these things according to the list that we've got here, prepared by your kind teacher that I know as a lady called Anne. Hello, Anne. Okay, so Rosie, why don't you kick us off? What's the name of the school again?
Harlan Community Elementary School.
Okay.
Alright, the first question is, what is your favorite color?
My favorite color. By the way, you'll have to excuse me. I'm just doing my exercises here because I recently had a stroke, and this is a ranger that thoroughly recommend it for this kind of exercise, and it just allows this arm to get into some kind of range of motion. Your teacher will be able to explain further. I'm sure she knows about the product too. Now let me just put it away so it's not distracting you. My favorite color, as you can see, I'm a boy, so boys like blue, right? Well, there's a special blue I like, and it depends. It depends what I'm doing, but I like Prussian blue, and I like ultramarine, and I like a combination of the two blues. I utilize them for doing skies and stuff. And of course, because I like those colors, I'm very, very much partial and interested in the color orange. So what is my favorite color? Prussian blue, ultramarine, and orange. Because all of those colors actually combine to make a very beautiful whole. You know, things are made to come together, you know, and opposites attract. And so when you've got a blue, it looks so beautiful on a painting where you've got the two colors working together, that they look as if they belong to each other. It's quite a remarkable mystery. Science has not fully explained a lot of things. Like, for example, science hasn't really proven the existence of music, except that we enjoy music. And I think it's the same with complementary colors. You can see that complementary colors, they go well together, but no one said why they go well together. They just happen to be. Anyway, so that's the answer to that question.
Second question, how do you think of ideas to paint?
How do I think of ideas to paint? Well, you've got to go around with your eyes open. You know, you're observing all the time, and in a situation like this, you might say, what's that? Well, it happens to be a composition of colors based upon the reflection of water during the fall season, where you've got some beautiful blues and oranges and reds that are operating in a situation. So you can look down in a reflection. So I get my inspiration just by looking around. And so I look around at wherever I go on a trail. And of course it's a bit difficult now because I've got a gammy leg, but I intend to have that back in working order one day. But that's what's important. How do you get your inspiration? By looking, because when you're looking, you're always finding something that's interesting, and you want to respond to it. You know, you want to make a comment about it, and it's like writing a note. Why is something beautiful? When you're painting, you're effectively demonstrating why you think that something is beautiful. All right, what's the next question?
How old were you when you started painting?
Oh, I was, I think I was probably about the equivalent of a third or fourth grader, but it wasn't until we were in a high school, we were not high school, middle school, where we were allowed to use fountain pens, you know, when you had the ink inside the pen. Well, of course, we as boys liked the color of the ink, which was blue. But more seriously, we used to use our fountain pens like water pistols, you know, and we would squirt each other's shirts. Anyway, the teachers would frown upon us, but we would use these times of learning to discover that when you put fountain pen ink on blotting paper, the fountain pen ink just runs, and I was absolutely excited and mesmerized by this, and that really is the foundation of my interest in watercolors, watching fountain pen ink running in blotting paper. In that regard, I was probably about 11 years old. Not much older than yourselves.
Yeah. Is it harder to paint since your stroke, and do you paint as much as you used to before your stroke?
Well, I used to paint more systematically. It was more my job. Now I'm distracted with these exercises to try make myself better. But so it was more a job before. Now it's like being thankful and very grateful that I can still paint, because parts of my brain have been damaged by this stroke, but the parts that are important for me are being able to paint, and I still have the use of my right arm and my right hand, and that was my dominant hand. So fortunately, I'm rather grateful that I can still paint. So I paint with a more thankful heart, rather than saying, right, it's Monday morning, time to work. You know what I mean?
Lovely. Do you like your pre-stroke or post-stroke paintings better, and how do you compare them?
That's interesting, and I noticed that different people prefer different parts, but again, I'm excited that I can still paint. I'm allowed to paint, and I get the time to paint, even though it's a little bit less. What was the question again? I've forgotten altogether.
Do you prefer your pre-stroke or post-stroke?
Oh, pre-stroke, right. Well, pre-stroke, I used to have more of a control, and I was able to do detail, you know, the attention to detail thing. And I used to be able to do that. And I used to be an architect, so I had a particular interest in graphic details. So post-stroke allowed me a looser attitude. I'm finding that I'm less tight, you know. So like when you saw me painting this picture, I didn't paint on an easel. I used to paint on a board with a 10-degree angle to it. But now when I paint on this, I can see the paint just dribbling down, and that's really quite exciting. I wouldn't tolerate that before. So because of that and various other aspects, and the fact that I'm painting with a brush quicker, and I'm finding that the paintings, as a result, are looser, you know, and so they're more of an expression and more of an impression at the same time. So in a sense, you're creating an impression of what you're interested in, but your expression is looser and less graphic. So I do actually like the exploration. It's a period. I'm not used to this. And I'll be honest with you, I get quite frustrated with this condition. But I'm excited about exploring a new period of time that's given me a chance to do new paintings altogether and accepting a looser style. That's a big challenge for me, you know, where precision used to be very important. So I actually like the post-stroke period, but I need more time to be able to evaluate it. I hope that answers the question.
What is your favorite sport?
Well, you know, I'm not really a sporty character in the way of football or tennis, so forgive me. When I was a kid, we used to play in England, because I come from a little island across the pond. There's a pond called the Atlantic Ocean, and on the other side of it, there's quite a few countries, but there's one particular country where they coincidentally speak the same language as we do here in America, and that's English. But I used to play soccer, and so whether it was my favorite sport is a different thing. It's about the only sport that we used to have, because we had other sports that I could never understand, like cricket and various things like that. But I think you could say soccer.
What is it like being famous?
I don't know. I have to ask you that question. What's it like, Harlan Community Elementary School? What's it like to be famous? You know, I've never desired to be famous, but where I do live is perfect if you happen to be famous, because you can really get squirreled away here in the mountains of North Carolina and be completely and perfectly anonymous. So
Lovely.
I don't think it matters to me, even if I was famous, nobody knows me. Okay.
Does it calm you when you paint?
I do find it a tremendous therapy, yes, and it's a means of communication. I met, for example, your art teacher, Anne, through the fact that I was an artist. So in a sense you do find yourself communicating, and you think about it. You communicated your questions to me because of the art. So I find it therapeutic in as much as it causes you to exercise your ability to communicate with people, and that's what we do as creatures, you know, as people. We paint because what we're looking at communicates to our eyes, and we want to communicate back by expressing a comment on what we see. So there is a certain element of therapy involved. Obviously, at the end of the day, there's a pretty nice piece of therapy that happens when somebody says, "Oh, I like that painting," and they take out the checkbook out of their pocket, you know, and they say, "Oh, can we write you a check for that?" And then they ask you, "How much is it?" And you tell them, and then you have to pick them off the floor, you know, because they get a bit of a shock or a surprise, you know, when you tell them how much the painting is. And of course, I'm not going to tell you right now because the price will go up. All right.
Who taught you how to paint?
You taught me how to paint. You know, we all go to school, we learn certain things, but at the end of the day, it's after you learn the tools from your teachers that you then have to apply that to the time that you have in your own possession, in your own control. So you can never escape that the best way to learn is having learned the tools from good teachers. And I have had a tremendous combination of teachers over the years, and you draw a little bit of knowledge from every single one of them, but it's your time and self-discipline applied to it, and doing your homework and painting in extra time, whatever you're doing, that you discover that the learning experience is a combination of learning from your teachers, not necessarily just one, and the time that you input into it called experience. So in my own situation, I would say that I don't have necessarily a single person who has taught me, but I have certain people who, artists down the years, the Impressionists you will have heard about, and various other individuals like that, where you're not necessarily being taught by them, but by looking at their paintings, you're learning through the experience of appreciating. And I'm sure in time you're going to be able to have an opportunity to learn how to critique a painting, which is part of the process of learning. So I hope that happens.
Thank Landon for expressing that he liked your post-stroke paintings just as much as your pre-stroke paintings. And we wanted to say hi to Bo, who remarked that you are still pursuing your dreams. Yes,
well, you know, it's good to have a good dream, and not to be afraid to have a dream that may be even unreachable. You know, some of us might used to think that it would be quite a good idea to go to the moon one day, but you know, sometimes you have to be realistic that that opportunity might not be coming up your way just yet. But yeah, so please pursue your own dreams. I'm sure if you're enjoying your art, that you're going to be able to take it from here and be inspired and be quick to listen and observe and watch, and particularly if you find that it excites you in a good way, you know?
So what is your favorite painting?
Well, I don't believe that there is one single favorite painting. There's so many pieces done by different people that I've liked over the years. And so you can imagine that you're spoiled for choice, but there is one particular artist that does stand out as being one that I like very much. And his name is J.M.W. Turner, and he is early 19th century watercolors, though he did paint oils. And in fact, his watercolors were often used as preparations for his larger oil paintings, which he did for certain commercial reasons. But his watercolors were so incredibly beautiful, and he was propagated by a critic, an art critic called John Ruskin. It's very important to learn how to appreciate a painting, because that is part of being an art critic. And so I'm sure that your art teacher is teaching you how to look at a painting and examine and make it understood as to why that painting looks so particularly good. But taking J.M.W. Turner's paintings, I love the atmosphere of his watercolors, and there are certain images that he's done that I've particularly found an affinity towards. I was brought up on the Irish Sea, and on the coast of the Irish Sea, and we had some pretty lousy weather in England in those days, and they probably still have pretty lousy weather now in 2015. But what I remember in those days, the storms are quite spectacular, even though they might not be very colourful. They can be very spectacular with the waves and the spray from the ocean and the wind howling and the atmosphere and the noise that you hear in a storm, you know. And somehow the artist likes to be able to convey that, even though in a painting you can't hear the sound. There is a way of being able to convey the emotion of the sound. And he would be fascinated by the storms, so much so that he would ask to be fastened to the mast of a ship, and to make sure that when the waves would come across the boat, he wouldn't find himself being washed out into the ocean. But he loved seeing the effect of the storm, and he would be strapped to the mast of these ships for the purpose of getting a better experience of certain things that the ordinary person would only dream of, you know. And he put that across in a number of paintings that I had a lovely affinity towards. His sunsets and his studies of sunsets in watercolors I found very, very interesting. So I would say these particular pieces have had a tremendous effect on me. I love the atmosphere and the moodiness and just a lot of the detail lost in the emotion of the images. I can find a real affinity towards. I hope that's answered your question enough. Well, thank you very much.